Welcome back, Deep Divers. Today we're going deep on the release train engineer.
The RTE.
Yeah, the RTE. It's a pretty crucial role in safe, version 6.0.
Right.
So we're going to break down what they do, the kind of skills they need,
Yeah.
and maybe even touch on like the challenges they face.
It's a multifaceted role for sure. Yeah.
So to help us out, I've got a certified safe program consultant with us, over a decade of experience.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. I've always been fascinated by the RTE role. It's it's like taking Agile and like scaling it up, to the whole organization.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
So let's just jump right in. What does an RTE actually do all day?
Well, it's not really a typical day kind of thing. It's more about like constantly facilitating, coaching, problem solving.
So it's pretty dynamic.
Totally. Like 1 minute they're coaching a scrum master, the next they're leading a workshop on dependencies, and then boom, they're presenting a risk plan to like senior management.
Wow, so a lot of juggling. Let's break that down a bit. You mentioned facilitating events. Is that like those big PI planning sessions?
It is, but it's not just about like running the event. It's about designing it so the teams can self-organize,
So the RTE is like a conductor, not a dictator.
Exactly. A good RTE knows the agenda is just a starting point. The magic happens when the teams take ownership and plan their own work.
That's cool. But aren't there times when the RTE has to step in, like make a decision?
Oh, absolutely. Especially when it comes to impediments, those roadblocks that can like totally derail the RTE.
So like if one team's stuck waiting for another team.
Exactly. And instead of just, telling people what to do, the RTE brings everyone together, helps them understand the root cause of the delay.
Right.
And then guides them to a solution that works for everyone.
It's all about collaboration then, not authority.
Exactly. And a good RTE knows when to escalate things too,
Escalate. Like to who?
To senior management, if the impediment's like an organizational roadblock or needs resources from outside the RD.
Makes sense. This is pretty fascinating because it sounds like a really dynamic role, but also like kind of challenging.
Oh, definitely. We haven't even touched on risk management, That's another huge part of being an RTE.
Oh, right, risk. So is that just about like those risk registers or what?
It's way more than just documentation. A great RTE is always looking out for potential risks, getting the teams involved and assessing them, and then proactively developing mitigation plans. They don't just wait for problems to happen.
So they're like those weather forecasters, issuing warnings before a storm hits.
Exactly. And just like a good forecast helps people prepare, a good risk mitigation plan helps the RT minimize the impact of those problems.
I'm starting to see how complex this role is. They're like part facilitator, part coach, part problem solver, and part risk manager all at once.
And that's just scratching the surface. We haven't even gotten to their role in like continuous improvement or coaching leadership on agile principles.
Whoa, hold on. There's more. Okay, maybe we need a real-world example here.
Yeah.
Let's say we've got two teams on the RT, and they're working on features that depend on each other.
Okay.
One team hits a snag and falls behind.
Yeah.
What's the RTE doing in this scenario?
Well, they wouldn't, panic. They'd start by bringing the scrum masters from both teams together, maybe some key developers too.
To figure out what's going on.
Exactly. It's about understanding the root cause of the delay, asking why 5 times, getting to the bottom of it.
So no quick fixes. It's about understanding the problem first.
Absolutely. And remember, the RTE doesn't have authority over the teams. So it's all about collaboration, finding a solution that everyone can get behind.
Okay, they've got everyone in the room. They've figured out the problem. What happens next? Do they tell the teams what to do?
Nope. They facilitate the discussion, help the teams brainstorm solutions, and guide them towards making a decision that supports the RT's goals.
So what kind of solutions are we talking about here?
Well, it depends on the situation, right? Maybe they help the team that's behind figure out a minimal viable product, something they can deliver fast to unblock the other team. Or maybe the other team can work on a different part of their feature while they wait.
I see.
And if it's like a really sticky situation, the RTE might need to escalate it to senior management, to get more resources or adjust priorities at the program level. It's all about finding the best way forward given the constraints and the overall goals.
Wow, this is really interesting. I bet some of our listeners are thinking, hey, this RTE thing sounds pretty cool. Maybe that's a career path for me.
Yeah.
What advice would you give someone who wants to become an RTE? What skills should they focus on?
That's a great question. There are a lot of important skills for an RTE, but I'd say the most important ones are like facilitation, coaching, and communication. Being able to guide groups to decisions, help people and teams grow, and communicate clearly with everyone, from developers to executives, are all absolutely essential.
So it's not enough to just understand SAFe. You need to be able to, like, actually use it
Yeah.
out in the real world working with people.
You got it. And those people skills are just as important as the technical ones.
Okay, so working with people, facilitating, coaching. Anything else aspiring RTEs should know? Like maybe about the SAFe framework itself.
Definitely. The SAFe framework, it's incredibly detailed and complex, and it's always changing. Aspiring RTEs should definitely spend time studying it, reading the latest stuff, and even considering the SAFe Program Consultant certification. It's a great way to show your expertise and commitment to the framework.
So it's not just a one-time learning thing, it's a constant journey.
You got it. And the best way to learn is by doing right. So I'd encourage aspiring RTs to get involved in RT events any way they can, even if it's just a supporting role.
Right, get your hands dirty.
Exactly. It's a great way to see how things work in practice and start building those skills.
This is great advice for aspiring RTEs, but what about those who are already in the role? What are some of the, like, toughest challenges they face, and how can they deal with them?
Well, one of the biggest challenges is managing expectations. You know, the RTE role is often seen as this cure-all for like all of an organization's agile problems.
Right.
But in reality, they can't single-handedly change an organization's culture or like fix deeply ingrained problems.
So it's important to set realistic expectations both for yourself and for the organization.
Exactly. And you need support from leadership too. If the organization isn't truly committed to agile transformation, the RTE's efforts are going to be, well, pretty tough.
Okay, managing expectations, getting leadership support. Got it. What other challenges?
Well, dealing with resistance to change is a big one. Some people are going to be excited about going agile, while others are going to be skeptical, resistant, maybe even hostile. It's the RTE's job to, like, navigate those waters.
Yeah, that sounds tricky.
It is. It's about understanding where the resistance is coming from and addressing it in a way that's both, like, empathetic and effective.
So being a change agent, but also a diplomat.
Exactly. And remembering that change takes time, patience, and lots of communication to bring everyone along.
This is starting to sound incredibly complex. It's not just about meetings and coaching. It's about organizational politics, expectations, change management.
It is. And that's why the RTE role is so challenging, but also incredibly rewarding.
So tell me, what are some of the most rewarding parts of being an RTE? What makes it all worthwhile?
Well, for me, it's seeing those teams grow and mature, seeing them take ownership and deliver amazing results, seeing the organization become more agile, more responsive to change, more customer-focused, and knowing that, that I played a part in that.
That's inspiring. It's like the RTE role is not just a job, it's a mission.
I like that, yeah. A mission.
Okay, so we've talked about challenges, rewards, essential skills. But we haven't really talked about one of the most crucial events in SAFe PI planning. It's like the heartbeat of the RT, where everyone comes together to plan the work for the upcoming program increment. And I bet our RTE plays a key role in that too, right?
Oh, they do. They're practically the maestro of PI planning, making sure everyone's in tune and playing from the same sheet of music.
All right, so let's dive into that. What's the RTE doing before, during, and after PI planning?
Well, before the event even starts, they're busy making sure all the necessary information is ready. The program vision, the roadmap, the top features, all that stuff.
Thanks, Ed.
They're making sure everyone has what they need to create their plans.
So setting the stage for success.
Exactly. They're also handling all the logistics, the space, the technology, even, the fun stuff that helps create a good atmosphere.
So they're not just a facilitator, they're like a party planner too.
Well, a productive party planner.
Right. Okay, so the stage is set, the information is prepped, the snacks are stocked. PI planning day arrives. What's the RTE doing now?
Now they switch into full-on facilitator mode, guiding the teams through the planning process, making sure everyone understands the goals, the process, their roles.
So keeping everyone on track, moving in the same direction.
Exactly. And they're facilitating those dependency discussions too.
Those pesky dependencies, right? Always popping up.
Exactly. The RTE helps the teams work together, find creative solutions, and avoid those potential roadblocks.
And what about risks? We talked about the RTE managing risks earlier.
Yeah.
How does that work during PI planning?
Well, during PI planning, the RTE helps the teams identify and document the risks associated with the planned work.
So shining a light on those risks, making them visible.
Exactly. And they work with the teams to develop mitigation plans. So it's not just about identifying risks, it's about actively addressing them.
Being proactive, not reactive. I like it.
And throughout PI planning, the RTE is observing, listening, coaching, making sure the teams are using SAFE principles effectively and providing guidance when needed.
So they're managing the event, but they're also nurturing the RT's agile maturity.
Exactly.
Okay, the event wraps up. Everyone's exhausted, but hopefully energized by the plans they've created. What's the RTE up to now? Do they finally get to relax?
Not quite. They're helping to consolidate all those plans, communicating them to stakeholders, and making sure everyone's aligned on the path forward.
So they're like the glue that holds everything together.
Exactly. Making sure all that momentum from PI planning carries forward.
And I imagine capturing any lessons learned from the event itself, right? So they can improve the process next time.
Always iterating, always improving. It's the agile way.
Absolutely. This has been incredibly insightful. We've covered a lot today, from the day-to-day tasks of an RTE to the bigger picture of what makes them successful. For our listeners who might be new to SAFE, I think we've demystified this role a bit. It's not just another project manager, it's a leader who empowers, facilitates, and guides the RT towards success. But before we wrap up, I want to take a closer look at those qualities and skills that make an RTE truly great. We've touched on them briefly, but let's explore them in more detail, shall we?
Let's do it.
So let's start with this idea of servant leadership. It sounds a bit counterintuitive, right? Leading by serving others. Can you unpack that a bit for us?
Sure. So servant leadership in the context of an RTE means putting the needs of the RT and the teams above their own. It's about empowering others to do their best work, removing obstacles, and creating an environment where everyone feels supported and valued.
So it's less about being the boss and more about being a facilitator, a coach, a mentor.
Exactly. It's about leading by example, building trust, and fostering a collaborative culture.
Can you give us an example of what that might look like in practice?
Absolutely. Let's say a team's struggling with a really tough technical challenge. A servant leader, RTE, wouldn't just tell them to figure it out or, assign it to someone else. Instead, they might roll up their sleeves and work alongside the team, offer guidance and support, or connect them with someone else in the organization who has the expertise. It's about empowering the team to find the solution, not just providing the answer.
So, getting in the trenches with the team, showing them you're not above getting your hands dirty.
Precisely. It's about being present, being involved, and having a genuine desire to help the team succeed.
That's a powerful image. And it really speaks to the collaborative nature of the RTE role. It's not about barking orders, it's about working with the teams, side by side.
You got it.
Okay, so servant leadership is key. What about those all-important facilitation skills? We've talked about the RTE facilitating those big RT events, but what does that actually entail? What makes a good facilitator?
Well, a good facilitator is someone who can guide a group through a process, a discussion, a decision in a way that's productive, efficient, and inclusive.
Right.
They need to be able to create a safe space for open dialogue, manage different personalities, and keep everyone focused on the goal, all without taking over.
So it's not about standing at the front of the room and lecturing. It's about drawing people into the conversation, making sure everyone feels heard.
Exactly. And being adaptable. Sometimes you need to be more directive. Sometimes you need to step back. A good facilitator reads the room and adjusts their approach.
That makes sense. Flexible, adaptable, responsive to the group.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And they need to be able to handle conflict constructively. Disagreements happen, especially with complex issues. A good facilitator can guide the group through those in a respectful and productive way.
Turning disagreements into opportunities.
Exactly. And those facilitation skills, they're important for working with small teams and large events like PI planning. It's all about creating a space for effective collaboration.
Okay, so we've got servant leadership and facilitation skills. What about coaching? How does that come into play for the RTE?
Well, coaching is all about helping individuals and teams develop their skills. In SAFE, the RTE coaches the art to implement the framework well and helps individuals grow in their roles.
So it's not just explaining SAFE, it's helping people live it, make it part of their daily work, and constantly improve.
Exactly. It's about guiding them, helping them overcome challenges, and empowering them to own their agile journey.
Can you give us an example of what that might look like in practice?
Sure. Let's say a team's having trouble breaking down their work into small user stories.
Happens all the time.
Right. So a coach like RTE would work with them to understand why they're struggling, help them identify the root cause, and then guide them through the process of creating good user stories. Maybe even pair with them for a bit to demonstrate the techniques.
So providing guidance, support, tools, but ultimately empowering the team to find their own solutions.
Exactly. It's about helping them become more self-sufficient.
That makes sense. Building capacity, not just solving problems.
You got it.
Okay, we've covered servant leadership, facilitation skills, and coaching. What about those all-important communication skills? Why are they so crucial for an RTE?
Well, as an RTE, you're constantly communicating with all sorts of people. Developers, testers, product owners, scrum masters, business owners, executives, you name it.
So you need to be able to speak everyone's language, translate technical jargon into business speak, and vice versa.
Exactly. You need to tailor your communication style to your audience, be clear and concise, and make sure everyone understands.
It's not just about talking, it's about listening too, right? Really hearing what people are saying, understanding their concerns, and responding in a helpful way.
Absolutely. Active listening is crucial. You got to pick up on those subtle cues, read between the lines, understand the underlying message.
So being a good communicator isn't just about being articulate, it's about being perceptive, responsive, a good listener.
Precisely. And being transparent and open, people need to trust that you're honest, keeping them in the loop, and looking out for their best interests.
Trust is essential in any collaborative environment, especially in a fast-paced world like an RT.
You got it.
Okay, so we've got servant leadership, facilitation skills, coaching, communication. We've got one more key quality to explore. Systems thinking. What does that mean for an RTE?
Systems thinking is about seeing the big picture, understanding how different parts of a system connect and influence each other. It's recognizing that a change in one part can ripple throughout the whole system.
So it's not just about focusing on the individual pieces, it's about seeing the whole puzzle.
Exactly. And understanding that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. In an RT, it's seeing how the teams, the processes, the tools, the structure all work together to create the system.
Can you give us an example of how systems thinking comes into play for an RTE?
Sure. Let's say a team is consistently delivering high-quality work, but they're always missing their deadlines. Right. A systems thinker RTE wouldn't just focus on the missed deadlines. They'd look at the bigger picture. Dependencies on other teams, workload, process inefficiencies, even cultural factors.
So taking a holistic view, considering everything.
Right, and then finding those leverage points where they can have the biggest impact. It's not just about fixing the symptom, it's about addressing the underlying cause.
That's a powerful concept. It shows how important the RTE is as a facilitator and a change agent. They're not just keeping the train running, they're optimizing the whole system.
You got it. And that optimization often requires looking beyond the immediate needs of the RTE. It's about considering the broader organizational context.
This has been incredibly insightful. We've explored so many aspects of the RTE role, from servant leadership to systems thinking. We've talked about facilitation, coaching, communication, and how they all come together to create a truly effective leader. But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to shift gears a bit and talk about something you mentioned earlier, the challenge of navigating constant change.
Ah, yes, that's a big one. In the world we live in, change is the only constant. And that can be especially tough for organizations trying to implement Agile.
It's like the train is constantly upgrading its tracks while moving at full speed. So how can an RTE help their teams navigate this constant state of flux?
Well, I think the most important thing is creating a culture of psychological safety, where people feel comfortable speaking up, sharing concerns, asking for help, without fear of judgment.
So a space where vulnerability is a strength, not a weakness.
Exactly. When people feel safe, they're more likely to embrace change, experiment, and learn from their mistakes. And that's essential in a world where the only constant is change.
And the RTE can model this behavior, right? By being open about their own challenges.
Absolutely. They need to show that it's okay to not have all the answers, to ask for help, to make mistakes.
So leading by example, being human, even in this world of Agile.
Exactly. They can also encourage teams to adopt a growth mindset, where challenges are seen as opportunities for learning and development. Things like regular retrospectives can help with that.
So turning those inevitable hiccups into valuable lessons.
Precisely. And speaking of hiccups, another key aspect of navigating change is effective communication. When things are constantly changing, It's more important than ever to keep everyone informed and on the same page.
So no surprises, no one feeling left out.
Exactly. The RTE needs to be proactive in communicating changes, explaining the rationale behind them, and addressing any concerns. They're the bridge between the big decisions and the teams who are implementing them.
And they need to be good listeners too, right? Getting feedback from the teams and taking it back to leadership.
Absolutely. Making sure the people closest to the work have a voice in the process. That feedback loop is essential for making sure changes are actually making things better.
So it's not change for the sake of change. It's change driven by data and feedback from those who are actually impacted by it.
Exactly.
Okay, so psychological safety, communication, feedback. What else can an RTE do to help their teams adapt?
Well, providing the right support is key. Training on new tools, coaching on how to adapt processes, that kind of thing. It's about making sure people have what they need to succeed in this ever-changing environment.
So it's not just telling people to adapt, it's giving them the tools and support to actually do it.
Exactly. And it's also about emotional support. Change can be stressful, even when it's good. The RTE can create a supportive environment by acknowledging people's feelings, providing reassurance, celebrating successes. It's about recognizing that change is a human process, not just a technical one.
This is really resonating with me. I think a lot of people can relate to that feeling of being overwhelmed by constant change. It's reassuring to know that a good RTE can help make that transition smoother.
Absolutely. And it all comes back to servant leadership. Being there for your team, guiding them through the tough times, celebrating the wins. In a world of constant change, that kind of leadership is more important than ever.
This has been incredibly insightful. We've talked about navigating change, psychological safety, communication, support, empathy. But before we go any further, I want to take a step back and reflect on something you said earlier. You mentioned that an RTE needs to be adaptable and resilient, not just for themselves, but for everyone on the RT. Can you unpack that a bit? What does it mean to be adaptable and resilient in the context of safe?
That's a great question. Adaptability in this context means being able to adjust to changing circumstances quickly. It means being open to new ideas, willing to experiment, and comfortable with ambiguity. It's about letting go of the old ways and embracing the new, even when it's uncomfortable.
So not being afraid to step outside your comfort zone, try new things, embrace the unknown.
Exactly. Because in a world that's changing this fast, being adaptable is essential. It's like Darwin said, it's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change. And resilience is the other side of that coin. It's the ability to bounce back from setbacks, to learn from mistakes, and to keep moving forward.
So it's about having that grit, that determination to persevere, even when things get tough.
Precisely. Because, let's be honest, in Agile development, things rarely go exactly according to plan.
There are always unexpected challenges, roadblocks, the occasional derailment, right?
That's right. And it's in those moments that resilience really shines, when you can pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and get back on track.
Okay, so we've defined adaptability and resilience, but how does an RTE actually foster those qualities in the RTE? Do they just tell people to be more adaptable and resilient?
Definitely not. It's about creating an environment where those qualities can grow. For example, they can create a culture of experimentation, where it's safe to fail and learn. Encourage teams to take risks, try new things, knowing that it's okay if things don't go perfectly.
So a safe space for learning and growth.
Exactly. And they can provide support when teams do face setbacks, helping them analyze what happened, identify lessons learned, and come up with a plan to move forward.
So being a coach and mentor, not just a manager.
Right. And perhaps most importantly, the RTE can model adaptability and resilience themselves, walking the talk, showing their team that it's okay to make mistakes and adjust course.
Leading by example.
You got it. And it's not just about words, it's about actions. The RTE needs to be willing to change their own approach, to adapt to new information, to learn from their own mistakes.
This is starting to paint a picture of the RTE as not just a facilitator or coach, but also as a kind of cultural architect.
That's a great way to put it. They're shaping the environment, the mindset, the values that help the RT thrive in this world of constant change.
So it's not just about following rules or processes, it's about fostering the right environment, the right mindset.
You got it. And that's a skill that takes time, practice, and a lot of self-awareness.
Speaking of self-awareness, we've talked a lot about the qualities of a great RTE. But what about the challenges they face? What are some of the biggest hurdles they have to overcome?
That's a great question. And I think one of the biggest challenges for any RTE is managing expectations. The RTE role is often seen as this silver bullet for all of an organization's agile problems, and that's just not realistic.
So they're expected to magically transform the entire RT into a well-oiled agile machine.
Exactly. And while a good RTE can make a big difference, they're not miracle workers. They can't single-handedly change a company's culture or fix deep-seated problems.
So it's important to set realistic expectations right from the start, both for yourself and for the organization.
Precisely. It's about being honest about what you can and cannot do, and being transparent about the time it takes to see real change happen. Agile transformation is a journey, not a destination.
Okay, managing expectations, being transparent, got it. What else?
Another big one is dealing with resistance to change, which is inevitable in any organization, especially when you're talking about something as fundamental as changing the way people work.
So how can an RTE navigate that? How do they deal with those who are clinging to the old ways?
Well, the first step is to understand where the resistance is coming from. Listen to people's concerns, acknowledge their fears, and try to see things from their perspective.
So practicing empathy.
Exactly, because often resistance comes from fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of failure, fear of losing control.
And once you understand those fears, you can start to address them.
Exactly. Sometimes it's as simple as providing more information, training, support, helping people feel more comfortable with the change.
Meeting them where they are, addressing their concerns, showing them the value.
Right. But sometimes it's more complicated. Sometimes the resistance is rooted in a belief that Agile just isn't the right approach. In those cases, it's important to have an open and honest conversation, really listen, and try to find some common ground.
So even when you disagree, it's about maintaining a respectful and collaborative relationship.
Exactly. Because ultimately, you're all working towards the same goal, delivering value to your customers.
This is really helpful. It's easy to get caught up in the mechanics of Agile and forget that it's ultimately about people. Okay, so we've talked about managing expectations and dealing with resistance. What other challenges do RTEs face?
Well, managing dependencies is a big one. In a large organization, it's common to have multiple RTs working on projects that depend on each other.
So what happens when one RT falls behind schedule or changes direction? Does the whole system fall apart?
It can definitely have a ripple effect, causing delays and frustration. It's the RTE's job to manage those dependencies, make sure everyone is aware of them, and minimize the impact when things go wrong. It's about communication, planning, and collaboration.
So it's like being an air traffic controller, making sure all those planes, or in this case RTs, are flying in formation and not crashing into each other.
That's a great analogy, and it highlights the need for clear communication, proactive planning, and a lot of flexibility, because in a complex system, things are constantly changing, and you need to be able to adapt on the fly.
This is starting to make the RTE role sound like a constant game of whack-a-mole, dealing with one challenge after another. It must be exhausting.
It can be, but it's also incredibly rewarding to see the positive impact you can have. And that's where another crucial skill comes in, one we haven't talked about yet: maintaining a sustainable pace.
Sustainability. That's a hot topic in the Agile world these days, and it's easy to see why. If you push people too hard for too long, they burn out, and the whole system crashes. But how does that relate to the RTE role specifically?
Well, it's the RTE's responsibility to make sure that the RT isn't just moving fast, but it's moving sustainably. They need to be advocates for the well-being of the teams and individuals.
So they're like guardians of the RT's energy levels, making sure the engine doesn't overheat.
Exactly. And it starts with setting realistic expectations for workload, making sure teams aren't overcommitting or trying to cram too much in.
So finding that sweet spot between speed and sustainability.
Precisely. And they can also encourage teams to adopt sustainable work practices, taking breaks, limiting work hours, prioritizing their well-being.
Okay, setting realistic expectations, encouraging healthy work habits. Got it. Anything else RTs can do to promote sustainability?
Absolutely. They can also advocate. Absolutely. They can also advocate for the RT's needs to leadership, making sure they have the resources and support they need to succeed without burning out.
So they're not just taking care of their teams, they're also fighting for them at the organizational level.
Exactly. And maybe most importantly, the RTE can model sustainable work practices themselves, leading by example, showing their team that it's okay to take breaks, to set boundaries, and to prioritize their well-being.
So it's not just about telling people to do it, it's about doing it yourself.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, a sustainable pace isn't just about being kind to your team, it's also about being smart. A burned out team is not a productive team. and a sustainable pace is the only way to make sure the RT can keep delivering value over the long term.
I think that's a great point to pause on. We've talked about the challenges of navigating change, the importance of psychological safety, the need for clear and consistent communication, and the crucial role of support and empathy. We've also touched on the importance of sustainability, both for individuals and for the RT as a whole. But before we wrap up this deep dive into the world of the RTE, I want to shift gears one last time and talk about the impact this role can have on an organization.
That's a great point. We've talked a lot about what the RTE does, but it's important to step back and look at the bigger picture, the why behind the role.
Exactly. So tell me, what kind of impact can a truly great RTE have on an organization?
Well, on a practical level, a great RTE can help an organization become more agile, more responsive to change, and more customer-focused. They can help break down those silos that often exist between departments, streamline processes, and get everyone aligned around delivering value to the customer.
So they're kind of like organizational therapists, helping everyone get along and work together more effectively.
That's a fun way to think about it. And they can also help create a more collaborative and engaged workforce where people feel empowered and motivated to do their best work. They're not just managing tasks, they're cultivating an environment where people can thrive.
That's a powerful image, the RTE as a cultivator of human potential within the organization. But what about the bottom line? Does all this agile stuff actually translate into tangible results?
Absolutely. By fostering a culture of continuous improvement where everyone is constantly striving to learn and grow, an RTE can help improve the quality of the products and services that the organization delivers. And that can lead to increased revenue, reduced costs, and improved customer satisfaction.
So it's not just about doing things faster, it's about doing things better. And a great RTE can be a catalyst for that kind of transformation, driving positive change throughout the organization.
Exactly. And it's a role that's becoming increasingly important as organizations face the challenges of digital disruption and rapid innovation. In today's world, the ability to adapt and evolve is no longer a nice-to-have. It's a must-have. And the RTE is at the forefront of that evolution, helping organizations navigate this complex and ever-changing landscape.
This has been an incredible deep dive into the world of the release train engineer. We've explored their many responsibilities, from facilitating key events to coaching teams to managing risks. We've discussed the challenges they face, from navigating change to overcoming resistance. And we've highlighted the qualities that make great RTEs, from servant leadership to systems thinking. We've also seen how the RTE role can have a profound impact on an organization, helping it to become more agile, more innovative, and more customer-focused. But before we wrap up this episode, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought. We've talked a lot about the RTE's role in driving change and improvement, but it's important to remember that the RTE is not a lone wolf.
They're part of a team, and they need the support of that team to be successful.
Exactly. The RTE works closely with Scrum Masters, product owners, developers, testers, and everyone else on the RT. And they need the support of those people to be effective. They also need the support of leadership to create the right environment for Agile to thrive.
Absolutely. Without that organizational buy-in, the RTE's efforts are likely to be in vain.
So if you're an RTE, or if you're thinking about becoming one, remember that you're not in this alone. There are people who can help you, guide you, and support you along the way. And together, you can make amazing things happen.
I couldn't agree more.
And on that note, I want to thank our expert guest for their incredible insights. It's been a real pleasure having you on the show.
The pleasure was all mine. Thanks for having me.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on the Deep Dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep into the world of knowledge. And speaking of making amazing things happen, let's circle back.
Oh, for sure. PI planning is where the rubber meets the road, It's where the vision for the upcoming program increment, the PI, actually comes to life.
It's where all those roadmap items become concrete plans, right?
Exactly. And the RTE, they have this pivotal role in making sure that transformation happens smoothly and effectively.
So walk us through it. What's the RTE doing before, during, and after PI planning?
Well, even before PI planning kicks off, the RTE's laying the groundwork, working with leadership, making sure the program vision, the roadmap, the top features, they're all clearly defined, clearly communicated.
So setting the stage, making sure everyone's on the same page strategically before the actual planning begins.
Precisely. They're gathering all the necessary info, too. Capacity plans, dependency maps, anything relevant from past PIs.
So giving the teams all the intel they need to make informed decisions.
Exactly, and they're handling all the logistics too, booking the space, making sure the tech's working, all that stuff.
It sounds like a lot of behind-the-scenes work.
It is, but it's essential for a smooth PI planning event.
Okay, so the stage is set, the information's prepped, the logistics are handled, PI planning day arrives. What's the RTE doing now?
Now they're in facilitator mode, guiding the teams through the planning process, making sure everyone understands the goals, the process, what their role is.
Keeping everyone on track, moving in the same direction.
Exactly, and they're facilitating those dependency discussions too, remember?
Ah, yes. Those dependencies, always lurking in the shadows.
The RTE helps those teams find solutions, avoid potential roadblocks.
And what about risks? We talked earlier about the RTE's role in managing risk. How does that play out during PI planning?
Well, during PI planning, the RTE helps the teams identify and document the risks associated with the work they're planning.
So bringing those risks to light.
Exactly. And they work with the teams to come up with mitigation plans. It's not just about identifying risks, it's about actively addressing them.
Proactive, not reactive. I like it.
And throughout PI planning, the RTE is observing, listening, coaching, making sure the teams are using those safe principles and practices well, providing guidance when they need it.
So they're not just managing the event, they're also helping the RT grow and mature in its agile journey.
Exactly.
Okay, so the event wraps up. Everyone's probably exhausted, but hopefully feeling good about those plans they've created. What's the RTE doing now?
Well, they're helping to consolidate those plans, make sure they're communicated to all the stakeholders, and that everyone's aligned.
Making sure those plans don't just gather dust on a shelf somewhere.
Exactly. And capturing those lessons learned from the event, of course, so they can improve the process next time.
Always iterating, always improving. The agile way.
Precisely.
Well, this has been an amazing deep dive into the world of the release train engineer. We've explored their many responsibilities. Facilitating those key events, coaching the teams, managing risks. We've talked about the challenges they face, like navigating change and overcoming resistance. And we've highlighted those qualities that make a great RTE. Servant leadership, systems thinking, all of that. We've seen how impactful this role can be, helping organizations become more agile, more innovative, more customer-focused. But as we wrap up this episode, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought. We've talked about the RTE's role in driving change and improvement, but it's important to remember they're not alone in this.
Absolutely. They're part of a team, and they need the support of that team to be successful.
Exactly. The RTE works closely with everyone on the RTE, Scrum Masters, product owners, developers, testers, and they need leadership support too to create the right environment for Agile to work.
Couldn't agree more. Without that organizational buy-in, it's going to be an uphill battle for any RTE.
So if you're an RTE or if you're thinking about becoming one, remember, you're not alone. There are people out there who can help you, guide you, support you, and together, you can make amazing things happen.
I love that. Together.
And on that note, I want to thank our expert guests for sharing their incredible insights. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
The pleasure was all mine. Thanks for having me.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on the deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible in the world of Agile.